Starting live.
And we can Henderson for Congress that thing up. We could put a whole bunch of Henderson for Congress stuff on that slingshot.
Yeah.
Okay, we are live.
Let's see what it takes to get a flag printed with the signs. Are we live?
We are live.
All right. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started since we've given everyone kind of time to get here, and for everyone who's joining us on the Militia Command the Facebook page. Hopefully, I'm glad that you guys are all going to be there as well.
And this is Captain Alexander with the U.S. Militia. We are filming live in Wallace, Idaho with Nick Henderson. And this is a live broadcast.
A few people show up. So we're gonna get started here, and I just kind of want to introduce myself to all of you, and for the most part, I know all of you, and you're somewhat familiar with me.
I should hope.
Yeah, I would hope so by this point as well. So my name is Nick Henderson, and I am running for Congress here in District 1. Shoshone County is in District 1, and you've had a chance to kind of hear a bunch of the other candidates speak. And this was just an opportunity for you guys to meet me, maybe ask some questions that you might have about what my plans are for Idaho and in Congress, and how I'm going to be able to best represent you guys in Washington, D.C. So a little bit about me, and especially for those of you that are joining us on Facebook Live. I am a U.S. Army veteran. I served in the 4th Infantry Division from 2004 to 2007. I was in Iraq 05 and 06, serving with the 4th Infantry over there as well, just north of Baghdad. In direct combat, and that's where I earned my Combat Infantryman's badge. After leaving the Army, I went to flight school. I went to college, earned a degree in aviation, and earned all of my pilot certificates, and I'm currently working as a commercial helicopter pilot. And then just a couple of years ago, about 2-3 years ago, I started my own company here in the Northwest called Aerial Resources Group, and what we do is we serve as a consulting company, a consulting firm, with drones, using drones in mining and exploration. Particularly, we've been doing a lot of drone integration with mines that are searching for gold or are already producing gold overseas. And so that's kind of my background in a nutshell. You know, I'm a veteran, I'm a commercial pilot, and I still do that full time, and I'm an entrepreneur, small business owner, and we do a lot of tech-related stuff. So the next thing would probably be why I'm running for Congress. One of the number one questions I get is, Nick, well, first it's how old are you? I'm 32. And it says, why are you running for Congress right now? You've got a great job flying. You're starting to build a good life for yourself here in Coeur d'Alene. Why would you want to give all of that up to go join an organization that has a 13% approval rating that nobody likes? Why do you want to go be a part of Congress? And I've had a chance over the last 7 months to answer that question a lot. And for me, personally, the big thing why I would want to do this is because I think, like all of you and all of you on Facebook, I'm really fed up with Congress. I don't want to be a part of that Congress. I want to be the change that we need in Congress. So I'm not a career politician. I've never held a political office before. I've never campaigned for office before. It's been a really tough learning process for the last 7 months getting here and figuring out what all we needed to do to make a campaign work. But we're making huge strides in all of Idaho, all of District 1, every time we get a chance to sit down with voters and I get to present why I'm running. So I look at Congress as a corrupt and twisted, dirty organization full of swamp creatures that are entrenched and they don't represent us. And I don't want to be a part of that. I do want to go to Congress to be the change that we need there so desperately. I want to take conservative principles, constitutional values, and take them to Congress and get them back on the right track. So after that, that's the why. Why am I doing it? And who I am. I guess next would be, what do I want to do? What do I stand for? What do I believe in? And a lot of my information, if you go to nickhenderson.vote, or vote Nick H, Nick Henderson for Congress on Facebook, all of my information is on there. Some of the highlights, the key points of what I want to do when I get to Congress. One of the main things I want to do is focus on national security and defense. So I am completely in favor of funding and building a border wall to secure our border. I also want to make sure that we stop chain migration and diversity lottery visas. I want to make sure that we have funding for our military that allows them to not only secure our border, but allows us to keep our country safe. I want to make sure that any military action overseas, such as these strikes that recently went underway in Syria, are done properly within the boundaries of the Constitution, and that they go through the actual deliberative process where we decide if that's the right thing to do. When it comes to education, I have a comprehensive education reform plan on my website. You can find that at nickhenderson.vote. There's a section that says updates from Nick, and all of my big policy pieces are written and they're on there for you to review. I wrote months ago a piece where I said I want to reform education in a way that gets America back on top of the system. And my plan for doing that is we currently spend 5.5% of GDP on education. That's about $1 trillion. It's an insane amount of money. It's the most money any country in the world spends. But where's that money going? The U.S. Department of Education is full of these unelected, faceless bureaucrats nobody knows. And by the time the money is appropriated and goes to them, half of it disappears into a black hole for their special projects and their special interests. I want to abolish, entirely get rid of the U.S. Department of Education, and I want to get that money back into the states where it belongs, and I want to have parents and teachers responsible for choosing where their kids are going to school and how they're being educated and what syllabus they're being taught. You know, I want to make sure that for Idaho and for America as a whole, we aren't teaching gender confusion and we aren't deleting history to accommodate the politically correct culture. And that requires us to take bold action and bold steps, such as getting rid of the Department of Education altogether. I also want to, and this is something I've been championing since the beginning of my campaign. It was one of my first policy positions. It was at the very start I wrote this and put it online. I am very much in favor of the descheduling and decriminalization of marijuana and cannabis products at the federal level. I believe that the federal involvement in that at all is a 10th Amendment violation. That should not be something the feds have any say in. Beyond that, it's not just that, but when I look at what they've done with it, the DEA says cannabis and marijuana is a Schedule I narcotic, which means it has absolutely zero medicinal value whatsoever. I think that's insane, because I've seen what it does for cancer patients. I've seen what it's done for people with Parkinson's disease. I've seen what it's done for people with chronic pain. I've seen what it's done for veterans with PTSD. The medicinal value alone is proof positive. We know that it's there. Why would the DEA keep it Schedule I? Big pharma and special interests. If you want to see where political corruption lies, look simply there at the DEA and the fact that it's still a Schedule I narcotic. So I would be a champion of total descheduling, decriminalization, and legalization at the federal level to allow the states then to appropriately make their decisions regarding legalization here. After we get away from legalization in that regard, I just wrote a piece, and one more thing on the descheduling of marijuana. I just wrote an article today and I put it up on my website. One of the biggest benefits I think we could get from that is right now the #1 cause of accidental death in the United States is drug overdose. It used to be vehicular accidents, motor accidents. It's no longer the case. You're more likely to accidentally die today from a drug overdose than from anything else in the United States. And a big part of that is these opiates that are these synthetic drugs that the pharmacies are pushing out, that doctors are pushing us on to get us these synthetic painkillers. People get hooked on them, the prescription runs out, and then they have to go to alternative sources, pharmacies in Mexico, drugs that have been imported from China, that have been cut with fentanyl, and now the opioid crisis you're all familiar with is out of hand. If we were to legalize and deschedule cannabis, marijuana at the federal level, medicinally we would have given people a natural, non-addictive, non-harmful way to treat their chronic pain. So there's a lot of positive that comes from that, and there's a lot of people that would toe the old kind of long in the tooth party line and say we can't legalize at all. I think any politician who's saying that they want to keep it Schedule I narcotic and keep it illegal needs to go. They're part of the problem. They're not part of the solution. They're not even willing to hear the evidence anymore. So that's a couple of my big ones, I guess. Let's see, what else? Second Amendment. The Second Amendment rights To me, I'm normally carrying every day. I just got off of a plane. My plane was delayed for like 3 hours out of Boise. I wasn't able to even get home and actually get my gun back out of the safe. Normally, I carry everywhere I go. The Second Amendment to me is the most important amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Without the Second Amendment, all of the other amendments are forfeit. The moment we allow any sort of encroachment or infringement on the Second Amendment, we've established a precedent for big government, for federal government, to encroach on all of the other amendments. So one of the things that I want to do when I get to Washington, D.C., is continue to make sure that the Second Amendment not only isn't encroached any further, that it is actually repaired, because we've already seen politicians and bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. trampling on the Second Amendment. So what I'd like to do when I get to Washington, D.C., aside from protecting the Second Amendment, I don't support raising the age to buy rifles to 21. I don't support the bump stock ban. I don't support the Gun-Free Zones Act, which has put so many of our school children at risk. And I want to work on repealing that, and I will repeal that in Congress. I don't support the Firearms Act of 1960. I want to repeal that and get that out of the way as well. Our Second Amendment is non-negotiable. It's supposed to be inalienable. And they've been trampling all over it. So I'm very much a proponent of advancing the Second Amendment, protecting the Second Amendment, and repairing the damage that's already been done. So with that, again, I'm Nick Henderson. I'm running for Congress on May 15th. We've got primary voting coming up. You can register to vote all the way up until the primary if you're not registered yet. And I encourage you all to go to my website, nickhenderson.vote. My Facebook page, Henderson for Congress. That's facebook.com/vote-NickH. All of my positions are on there. And if you have questions or concerns, if you have information you want to put into my camp, or if you want to talk to me directly, you can reach me. I respond to everybody as soon as I can. I respond to everyone personally. So with that, if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Would anybody out here on Facebook like to ask Nick any questions?
Yeah, we should have started with that, actually. If there's any questions on Facebook, send them in. I'll try to answer anything I can to those of you that are watching the live stream.
Hi, Phil Maxey.
But yeah.
I got a question then.
Okay.
So, what's your plan for starting to repeal the federal government's, hold on Idaho?
Right.
You know what I mean? On the lands, on laws that they try to pass here on a federal level, and if they try to enforce them here on ranchers, you know what I mean, rights and water rights with the EPA, the BLM. I mean, the whole 9 yards.
I appreciate you bringing that up, actually, because I forgot to mention it, but it's something that's been on my website as well, is I want to get Idaho back in control of Idaho's lands. You'll hear a lot of other politicians say, we want to get the federal lands back to Idaho. They're not federal lands. Right. They're state lands, and I want to see the state in control of them. The reason our fire seasons have become so massive is because the federal government has been leading a policy of kind of benign neglect when it comes to managing the lands. And as I've traveled across Idaho, I've heard people talk about how sick our forests are. And I've heard people that used to work in the lumber industry talk about how they're not allowed to harvest anymore. And a lot of that is because you've got, these bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., some of whom may have never even been to Idaho, making policy decisions for our state. So there's certainly merit to what I want to do is get Idaho back in control of those lands. When it comes to repealing the federal government, repealing the Department of Education, it would be worth looking into either totally abolishing the Bureau of Land Management and getting Idaho lands back under the Idaho control, or at least finding a way to get Idaho in charge of those lands and maybe scaling the BLM back down and getting them under control. It's something I want to look into, because I believe that a proactive management policy here in the state run by citizens of Idaho is the one that's going to keep us from having these just terrible fire seasons. We're going to be able to harvest these the lumber we need to and get the sick trees out of there before they spread. When it comes to access, that's something that's critical. Idaho citizens should have access to Idaho lands. Idaho citizens should have access to trails that they need to be on for hunting. They need to be able to take game to feed their families. They need to be able to do all of that. And federal laws have encroached upon our rights here as Idaho citizens, so we need to get those out of the way. That would be a sweeping bill that would just start cutting the federal government back down to size. I'd like to see the feds cut down to size by up to 80%. I'd like to see a lot of agencies go away. And it bothers me when you try and look up how many federal agencies exist in the federal government. There's so many of them, and they're all getting funded, but nobody knows how many exactly there are. People have taken stabs at it. If you look at the FBI fact books, they'll say there's 200 and some. If you look at the Congressional Budget Office, they'll say 400 and some federal agencies. How do we not know how big our government is? So one of the things that whoever the next representative that goes to Congress from Idaho is, and I'm hoping that person is me, and I want your vote and I want your support so that person is me, whoever gets to Washington, D.C. next needs to sit down and create a map of all of those federal agencies that are sucking money out of our budget and start crossing them off the list with a big red pen and get them out of the way and get them out of our state. Have there been any questions online yet? As far as we know?
Not
If
yet.
there's no questions online yet, I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this up. We'll wrap up the live feed. And again, I encourage everybody to go to the website, nickhenderson.vote, Facebook, Henderson for Congress. Learn about me, learn about my positions, read the articles. You'll find that I know a lot about what I'm talking about, and I've got a lot of great information online. I'd like to be your next representative in Congress. I'm asking you to vote on May 15th. It's important that you come out to vote. Even if you aren't voting for me, you should vote for me, but even if you aren't, you need to come out and vote. Your participation is critical to fixing our republic. So I'm going to say thank you guys for coming to the table today. We're at the Wallace Inn. They've been very great at accommodating us and giving us a great space to work in. And again, vote Nick Henderson, May 15th, Idaho primary.
I appreciate you coming out, Nick.
Thank you. All right, so we can... Which one's that? The EPA. The EPA? Yeah. They're on that list of agencies we're crossing out with them.
That shall be the big red pen.
Yeah. Just cross them all off the list. No.
Not in the Department of Labor.
Oh. That's you kind of snuck up behind me there.
Oh, that's all right.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah, the EPA, yeah. And that's another problem. You look at tapping into our natural resources, which here in the Silver Valley, we're chock full of resources. Idaho in general, we've got access. We've got oil, we've got shale gas, we've got natural gas. We could be doing more here to make ourselves an energy and resource producing state. But we got these feds in D.C. who've never been to Idaho making rules that we have to follow. And you got 400 agencies that exist back there, people who've never been elected. I don't know who they are. They're making rules that we're breaking the law every day. We're breaking a rule that we don't know exists, that came from an agency we don't know exists, that was made by someone we don't know every day. That's crazy to me. Like, that bothers me. So I want to get out there and I want to cut the whole government down to size.
I guess cleaning up the swamp is like 1% at a time.
Yeah.
Until enough good people get back there.
Well, we've got a deep swamp in Congress.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a deep swamp in Idaho.
We've got a Boise swamp too. Yeah. So it's important to elect good conservatives to the to positions here in Idaho as well. I want to see our city councils and our mayor races become partisan so that we know who's running, because there's been a lot of sneaky Democrats running as Republicans and getting elected, and we can't have that happening because our conservative values, our traditional values need to be protected. We need to keep Idaho, Idaho.
Absolutely.
Amen.
What is your position on clean energy? This is a vote from somebody else.
Our question from
me.
on clean energy?
Yeah.
Well, I think that when it comes to clean energy, we need to look at the technology that we have. When it comes to wind energy, the problem with that is that it's so highly subsidized, it costs us more to put wind turbines in than we're actually generating in terms of energy. What I'd like to see is continued progress in hydroelectric energy. We're facing a threat now from, what is it? Avista was getting bought out for their dams. That's going to affect our energy costs. I think nuclear energy is a clean option, and that's something that we should consider. And Idaho's we've got a nuclear reactor, and we should be pursuing that as a clean, sustainable energy source. People talk a lot about clean coal. That technology has been disproven. It's not really. It's kind of a net zero gain as well. Solar energy is something that's costing us too much as well. I'd like to see a lot of options. I'd like to see our energy system get more advanced. And I believe that people have really shied away from nuclear energy for the wrong reasons. I think that is a viable and clean way to further our energy production in a way that is sustainable.
The reason I ask is because growing up in the valley, we all know Lead Creek, and I mean, you know, because of the mining stuff, I mean, there's a lot of cancer that comes out of this area because of it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, what I will say, I mean, in terms of resource development, the United States has really grown, and we're great at what we're doing now. When it comes to tapping oil, when it comes to tapping resources, just from my experience, you know, I've worked in mines before. My family background is mining, obviously. The Silver Valley, we've had family in the mines here for 2 generations. Forever. And what I've been able to see and observe is the mining that we're doing now is so clean and so efficient. The way we're pulling oil and resources out of the ground is so clean and so efficient. There isn't a country in the world I want producing resources and energy, because the United States is the cleanest one doing it. That's why when President Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement, that was such a smart move, because that agreement put so many burdens on the United States when it came to producing coal or producing resources, and even burning coal, that we weren't going to be able to do any of that stuff. Meanwhile, it gave a country like China, who's one of the biggest polluters in the world, gave them carte blanche to do whatever they wanted with their coal production. It was a very lopsided deal. If I want anybody working with coal, I want it to be the United States. If I want anybody working with mining resources or, you know, going after oil and gas, I want it to be the United States. And so our energy policy needs to reflect that, and our trade agreements need to reflect that as well. All right. That's it. I thank you guys so much for coming out, and thank everyone who watched on the YouTube channel, or I'm sorry, Facebook Live channel. I really appreciate you tuning in as well. Thank you to Captain Alexander. Thank you for being here as well. So happy to be with the 79th 79th Battalion of the militia up here, and look forward to doing a lot of work with you guys in the future as well. And as soon as I can, getting out on these FTXs with you too. So
Appreciate it, Nick.
thank you very much.
Thanks for coming out.
Glad to be here.